Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another episode of 14 Divine Guides, where we are looking at the lives of the 14 infallibles and trying to not only look at their biography but also take lessons from their lives. Inshallah, today with me, as per last week, is Sayed Zafar Abbas. Assalamu alaikum, Sayyidina. Thank you once again, Sayyidina, for joining us on this live show. Just to remind the viewers, Inshallah, today we will be speaking about the peace treaty of Imam Hassan in the first part or two, Inshallah. And Inshallah, in the third part, we will try and look at also there's some misconceptions about the number of wives of the Imam and, of course, the children of the Imam. Peace and salutations be upon him. If you missed last week's episode, it's vital, I think, for you to catch up. You can watch on demand last week's episode, and that is to see a brief biography of the life of Imam Hassan. We looked at his life in a glance in last week's episode, and that will be on demand, inshallah, tomorrow. Tonight, inshallah, it's a live show. You can call us with any questions you have about Imam Hassan alayhi salam. Inshallah, Sayed Zafar Abbas will be looking forward to answering any of your questions, or if you have any comments about the life of Imam Hassan. I welcome my guest. Assalamu alaikum, Sayyidina. Thank you once again for joining us. Inshallah, we're trying to look at the peace treaty of Imam Hassan alayhi salam in the first part or two. But of course, let's look at the events leading up to the peace treaty. Inshallah, we'll try for the viewers to try and give them maybe a look of the situation in Medina, the situation in Sham, what was happening. And there was a lot of events that took place before this peace treaty. And I think it's only fair that we start by looking at the martyrdom of Imam Ali alayhi salam. As we all know, in the holy month of Ramadan, on the night of Zarbat, on the 18th of Ramadan, at morning Fajr, Imam Ali alayhi salam was struck by Al-La'in ibn Muljam, and of course 3 days later he was martyred. If you can go through the events after the martyrdom or leading up to the martyrdom of Imam Ali and after that.
So of course we're familiar, you mentioned Medina and you mentioned Sham. We are familiar, of course, with the fact that this part of the story actually starts from Kufa, because of course Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam has shifted the capital of the Muslim Ummah, of the Muslim world, to Kufa at the beginning of his rule. So when he assumed the office of the Zahiri Khilafat, he has moved the capital to Kufa. And when he was asked, or they were objected to this move, he said that Medina will never be the capital again. It's interesting to note that the Imam alayhi salam's words ring true still today, and Medina is still not the capital of any Muslim country. So he shifted the capital. The concerns maybe, or that he had of shifting it, may be many, but I think one that stands out is, of course, the rapid expansion of Muslims towards the west, and the need for a capital to be somewhere more central to the Muslim world than Medina. And Kufa, established some 2 decades prior, seemed to fit the bill. It was right in the middle of the Muslim world at the time, and it was easier to mobilize from Kufa than it would have been from Medina. And that, of course, is very crucial when we see what happens at Basra and at Siffin, that there would have been no chance of the Imam reaching Basra or Siffin if he had been in Medina. In any case, so he is martyred in the holy masjid of Kufa, those of us who are fortunate to have visited the ziyarah of the masjid and of the house and of the resting place, as we're well aware. This is where it all starts from. So of course, after the shahadat, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussain alayhi salam, bury him outside what was then Kufa, which is now Najaf al-Ashraf. And when they return back and the next morning dawns, so we're talking now 22nd of the holy month of Ramadan, Imam Hassan alayhi salatu wasalam assembles people in the masjid in Kufa, and he makes his first speech. He recounts to them the merits, the greatness of his father Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam.
By this I understand that Imam Ali appointed Imam al-Hassan as the Imam.
Correct. And what is interesting, of course, is that at this moment in time, people are also willing to accept Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam. He is the first person, in fact, in light of the order of Khalifs in the traditional belief, he's the fifth rightly guided Khalif, because of course he ruled for 6 months. And he is unique in that he is unanimously accepted by everyone. So the people all gather and they all pledge allegiance to him unanimously, in the sense that there's no disagreement that there should be somebody else or anybody else as an option. He is unanimously agreed upon by the Muslims. Sure. He makes a speech. In that speech, he recounts the merits of Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam. He reminds them of his bravery, of his excellence, of his knowledge, of his zuhud, taqwa, so on and so forth. People cry a lot as a result of it. Imam Hassan alayhi salam himself cries at the remembrance and the loss of such a great man. And at the end, he then, ends his speech, and then certain companions come forward and they invite people to pledge allegiance to him. When some people come to pledge allegiance to him, the Imam alayhi salam reminds them that this allegiance comes with some conditions. There's something that is attached to this allegiance, and he says to them that you're pledging allegiance to me, which means that you will go to war with those whom I go to war with, and you will make peace with those whom I make peace with. Hearing this, certain people, is mentioned some of the Khawarij who are unhappy with this, and they come to Imam Hussain alayhi salam and they want to pledge allegiance to him. And at that moment, Imam Hussain alayhi salam tells them off quite strongly and says to them that in the presence of my brother Hassan alayhi salam, there's no allegiance to me, in the sense that you're trying to create friction and division, whereas I am obedient to the Imam of my time, and that is Imam Hassan alayhi salam. So this is quite an interesting development as it begins. Of course, just as, the issue has not gone away. Just as when Imam Ali alayhi salam became the Khalifa apparent, the Zahiri, he dismissed the previous governors, and all of them were dismissed apart from Muawiyah in Damascus, and he refused to accept the authority of the Imam. And this is of course the reason why the Imam goes to the battle at Siffin, because of course Muawiyah refuses to recognize him as the Khalifa. He wants to retain his autonomy, and the Imam will not have any of it. The problem has not gone away, even despite the 3 months of fighting at Siffin, an unsatisfactory result, a Quran on spears, the Shura, so on and so on. This has all not produced any result as such. So when Imam Hassan alayhi salam assumes the office of the Khilafah Zahiri, he immediately is confronted with the problem of Muawiyah, because Muawiyah does not recognize his authority. Even though everybody in the Muslim world, from Medina to Kufa, have acknowledged the authority of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, the people of Sham, of Damascus, have still not accepted authority, and they continue to side with Muawiyah. So this is, with regards to Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he still had a break when when the people of Basra got involved and there was a battle, there was the battle of Jamal, then he focused towards the battle of Siffin. But Imam Hassan alayhi salam, as soon as he becomes the Khalifa, straight away his issue and contention and the problem that is staring him in the face is that of a whole group of people who refuse to acknowledge his authority. So this is where the whole story of the peace treaty begins, is that Muawiyah is refusing to accept Imam Hassan alayhi salam's authority.
Many critics, and obviously most from different schools of thoughts and historians, have asked what are the reasons for Imam Hassan accepting the Khilafat after his father? Could he have not declined the Khilafat, knowing that Muawiyah had opposed his father before and he will oppose him in any case, and for the sake of the Ummah he should leave the office and not even, and especially seeing his father being killed while in prayer because of this. What are the reasons for Imam al-Hassan accepting the Zahiri, as you mentioned, the office Khilafat of the Islamic capital?
If we look at the reasons, of course, that the Imam alayhi salam accepts the Imamah, then we go for two different angles. The first angle, of course, is that given the belief that the Imam is ma'soom, is appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of his actions are in line with the commandments of God. Therefore, he is beyond questioning. However, to understand the illah, the reasoning behind why he does certain actions, why does a particular Imam act in one way and another Imam act in another way, is to understand the situations and the socio-political situations of the time. Now, in that regard, we see that Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam has been, his father has just passed away, and he is, he has people who are willing to support him.
They hurried to his house.
They hurried to his house. They accept his authority. There are people present, and the responsibility, as we mentioned, as we see, for example, in what Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam says. So, for example, when Imam Ali alayhi salam, after the demise of the Holy Prophet of Islam, says, "If I had 40 people, I would have risen to claim back my right," which shows that the Imam, yes, he has authority from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he's the Imam, but in order to claim his rights, he needs the support of at least a small number of people. So when the Imam says, "If I had 40 people, I would have risen," that means that Imam Hassan alayhi salam has the people. So he has to accept the position in the sense that it is his responsibility to lead. Now, if somebody comes in the way, if they become a problem in that regard, then he has to deal with that, bearing in mind, as we've previously mentioned, that all of these things are, or everything that the Imam will do, is in line with the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but being also the interests of Islam and of Muslims.
Of course, as you mentioned, Muawiyah heard of the news of the Khilafat of Imam al-Hassan, the Caliphate of Imam al-Hassan ibn Ali, and he held a conference with the Umayyads, which led to two main decisions being taken place. One being the spread of spies, especially in Basra and Kufa, and the spies would inform people about would inform Muawiyah of the news. And the second one, which caused we see this also, I think, in when we look at the life of Imam al-Hussein, was to correspond with prominent figures and leaders in the community and bribe them to choose Muawiyah over Imam al-Hassan, which led to, obviously, Imam al-Hassan's position being weakened, we can say. And that's when Imam al-Hassan, I think, in the early days, wrote a letter to Muawiyah threatening him to war. Obviously, as we look at Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam, or any other infallible, he is an infallible. Anything he does, just like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is something that is from God. Here we see Imam al-Hassan threatening Muawiyah to start the war. how can we analyze the situation in the space, I would say, of a few weeks, him taking Khilafat and having then being chosen by the people, but then having spies around him and having people being bribed?
If we look back at the the classical ways in which to destabilize people, then these are really the classical ways in order to destabilize a leader, is to have spies around him, so that he feels uncertain of what decisions he's making, how secret his secrets are, and of course the other issue is of bribery. And in this light we have the narrations from Imam Ali alayhi salam, particularly إذا كان فقر إنسانا لقتلوه. If poverty was a man, I would have killed it, the Imam says. But also talking about hirs, about greed. So the one hand, the person who's going to who's going to be influenced by bribes is a person who either needs the money, so he doesn't have enough, so he's in faqr, he's in poverty, or is a person who has enough to support himself but is greedy. So in these two regards, we have narrations to tell us that this is the social illness or spiritual illness of society. That you either have people who are too poor to support themselves and therefore they can be corrupted, or there are people who are greedy. And of course we see that is the case. People do get corrupted because of what Muawiyah puts in their way. And also, of course, the issue of spies. Now, in this regard, the decision that Imam Hassan alayhi salam takes is that of a classical or a classical policy, that there is a person who is illegitimate in terms of authority, and he's trying to destabilize the government. So he has to be threatened with military action in order to really show the seriousness of the government and show the strength of the government, to show that this government is serious, it's here to stay, and it has the capability to militarily defend itself. So that the threat, if you like, is important to show the seriousness of the government, because the government is still relatively new. It's possible for people to manipulate it, and it is important, in fact, for the people on this side of the government, or the side of in Kufa, in Medina, to realize that this government is serious. Because if they don't realize that, then there's more likely to be affected by the bribes and more likely to be affected by the spies and go over to the side of Muawiyah. So in order to boost the morale of the people on your own side, and also to show and impress upon the other side that really we're here to stay, this is a serious matter. So I think this is the important thing, to be honest with you, that of the reasons why Imam Hassan alayhi salam demonstrates his strength, and also to show that yes, he does have the strength. Whether he uses it or not later on is another matter, but it's to show that he does have the strength and he will not shy away from using it if need be.
We see afterwards, when we read through history, of course, we see that Ibn Abbas, who was the governor placed by Imam Hassan al-Basra, then writes a letter to Muawiyah. Muawiyah replies, Ibn Abbas then writes a letter to Muawiyah. There's a lot of exchange of letters, and obviously for us to look at each letter it would take a whole show. But just to summarize, what was being said going back and forth before obviously this peace treaty?
Correct,
what was being said between the Imam and Muawiyah?
There are a number of letters in history we find. Those who are of course interested can have a read, either this book that we referred to in the previous show by Allama Baqir Sharif al-Qarashi, but also there are accounts of some of the letters in Al-Irshad by Sheikh Mufid alayhi rahmah as well, also available in English. And so in the exchange of letters, it's basically the Imam impressing upon Muawiyah his legitimacy, his authority, and the fact that Muawiyah needs to accept his government. Muawiyah keeps writing back with the same things that he wrote or said to Imam Ali alayhi salam.
He uses a lot of deception as well.
He uses a lot of deception. He uses a lot of trickery, of mockery, of cunningness, if you like, and he continues to use the excuse of the killing of Uthman as a reason for not accepting Imam Hassan alayhi salam, because he lays the blame of not arresting the killers, just as he did to Imam Ali alayhi salam, he does to Imam Hassan alayhi salam, and he continues to use this as an excuse to say that the people of Damascus will not accept your authority. So what is going back and forth is with regards to really the issue of legitimacy, who has legitimacy, who doesn't have legitimacy. This is what is being discussed. Back and forth. This is the reality of what's going on. And as you say, he uses deception, he uses cunningness to try and veil his intentions of what he's actually trying to achieve, which is eventually domination over the whole Muslim world.
Just so we get an understanding, the government of Imam al-Hassan consisted of a few other obviously main cities. Did Imam al-Hassan in the 6 months have control of his governments? Because we notice Ibn Abbas was obviously appointed by Imam al-Hassan, but what about other places, maybe like Medina, or obviously Sham was under Muawiyah, but what about other cities?
Yes, I mean all the places where Imam Ali alayhi salam had appointed governors, Imam Hassan had either continued those governors or he had put new ones, as the case may be. So areas like Mecca, Medina, Basra, and also various other places in Iraq were all under the control of Imam Hassan alayhi salam as far as governors were concerned. Of course, the only governor that would not be removed was Muawiyah himself in Damascus. So, and he of course had control not only of Damascus but the whole Sham region. So this was the main area of contention, and of course the main threat was coming from Sham as well, because of course this is why the Battle of Siffin had taken place, and there were a lot of people in Sham and a lot of people who were loyal to Muawiyah who could be mobilized very, very quickly. So this was the main issue, the main threat, and this is why Imam was focused on this particular threat, or to defend his the ummah and the people from the shar and the deception and the evil that was emanating from Muawiyah.
Ahsan Sayyidina. Inshallah, we will be going for a short break. We have covered quite a bit, I think, but inshallah we've got after we come back, we'll try and go through the events where Muawiyah declares then the war. And then obviously what Muawiyah has done, which we mentioned, is he caused a lot of money being spent in Kufa and Basra, where even though the people, inshallah we'll look at this in the first part, the people, even though they were in the army of Imam al-Hassan, but they were not Shi'as of Imam al-Hassan. And inshallah that's a very important question, just like that of Imam al-Hussein. There's a lot of similarities. The people, they called for Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam to fight against Yazid, but they were not real Shi'as. They didn't think of Imam al-Hussein as a rightly guided Imam chosen by Allah. And again, inshallah, we'll look at this with regards to Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam, and the reasons, I think, for the peace treaty is quite important. And then the peace treaty itself, inshallah, we'll look at. All this, inshallah, will be after this short break. We will see you in a couple of minutes. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to 14 Divine Guides. We are looking at the peace treaty of Imam al-Hassan al-Mujtaba, salamullahi alayhi, peace and salutations be upon him. Just before the break, we managed to look at the events leading up to the caliphate of Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam, and then the exchange of letters between him and Muawiyah. And we noticed that Imam al-Hassan actually threatens Muawiyah because of the bribes and the spies that Imam al-Hassan obviously notices what is happening in his around him. Uh, just before the peace treaty, war is declared and armies are set up. When we read history, we notice that a war was on the verge of taking place before the peace treaty. If we can go through those events, Sayyidina, before the actual peace treaty. And where did this war plan to happen as well, if possible?
So if we look at the exchange, obviously the exchange of letters is going on, and then eventually, as the plan of trying to subjugate Imam Hassan alayhi salam through this war of words, if you like, did not really work, then Muawiyah realized that he should declare war, just as he had done at Safin prior to Imam Ali alayhi salam. So he really he had done his homework, if you like, if we can call it that, in that he had bought out the people of the Iraqi tribes. And he knew that the people in Iraq were divided, and he knew that Sham was safe from all those problems, and that Imam Ali alayhi salam being killed was a massive blow for the people of Iraq. So Muawiyah declares war. Now, of course, then again, as we've mentioned previously with regards to what the Ma'soom does in this regard, that they will not initiate the fighting, they will not initiate the war. But if war is declared upon them, then they will respond. To the extent that, in fact, when we look at after Safin, when we look at Nahrawan, when the Khawarij were going around killing people, and Imam Ali alayhi salam, says to them that if you don't stop this, then we'll go. There will have to be war. And even then, when there is war, and the Imam then says to them, whoever amongst you wants to, surrender and they don't want to fight, they should come here and stand under the flag. And many of them do. And then there's still just 4,000 remaining. And then the Imam says, even now, you will start the fighting and I will not start the fighting. Even for the Khawarij, people who are actually really, a threat to human beings as a whole. Even then, the Imam alayhi salam doesn't start the fighting. So here, of course, Imam Hassan alayhi salam, yes, he threatened them with war, but he hasn't started the fighting. In fact, he hasn't even initiated the proceedings of war. It is Muawiyah who realizes that there is a chance that he may be militarily successful if he wages war on Imam Hassan alayhi salam, because I think the key point is that he knows that his people, the people in Sham, are united behind him, but he knows the people of Iraq are not united behind Imam Hassan alayhi salam. Like, they've pledged allegiance to him, but they are not loyal to him for various reasons, mainly because of the corruption and the bribes that he has spread around, so that they abandon Imam Hassan alayhi salam, and through the deception that he spread throughout Kufa and in the whole of Iraq, really.
We look at the war actually taking place. Imam al-Hassan puts Ubaidullah for leading his army, which was obviously all the way to Sabat.
Yes.
There isn't an exact number, I believe, of the army of Imam al-Hassan, but it's quite a large number.
Yes. It starts off with 4,000 according
4,000,
to many narrations, and then eventually people start abandoning him.
I've narrations all the way up until 12,000.
Yes.
As Ibn Abil Hadid mentions. But if we were to go through this army and try and put it into categories, how many of them were with the Imam, knowing that this is an Imam chosen by Allah and we are fighting under him no matter what? And how many were there for the bounties? How many were there for the sake of, there's many reasons, and of course many historians mention these reasons. What are the reasons for people, he had a large number of people with him?
In fact, so famous, the Battle of Siffin, and following this battle that was supposed to take place between Imam Hassan and Muawiyah and then didn't, it became that in many languages, including in Arabic, the expression for my enemy's enemy became the enmity of Muawiyah. So we'd say, for example, the fulan person is doing something not because he wants to do it, but in the enmity of Muawiyah. So there was actually a whole group of people who were fighting in Siffin with Imam Ali alayhi salam, and in this battle with Imam Hassan, not because they wanted to be with Imam Ali or with Imam Hassan, but because they didn't like Muawiyah. So when Muawiyah favored them, then they stopped not liking him and they began to like him. So they were still on the side of Imam Hassan, but they liked Muawiyah as well. So in terms of the number of Shia, as was the case at the Battle of Siffin, the number of Shia is very, very few. Maybe a handful at most. And the vast majority of people, again, are those who see him as an ordinarily good man. So they see him as a better person than Muawiyah, but they don't necessarily see him as an imam, as someone who is to be followed unquestioningly. And of course, that leads to friction, because there are people who believe him as the imam and follow unquestioningly, but there are people who will cast shadow on or cast doubt on his decisions, and they will say, okay, we think he's a good man, but we think that he should act in this way or that way, or so on and so forth, and we don't really think that we unconditionally need to obey him. So for that reason, there's a contention between these people. And then of course there are those people who, as you say, are in the army because they want the bounties or the worldly benefits, or they think that that they're going to get some kind of...
Or they're joining the army because it's a large number, so they think they'll gain victory.
They think they'll gain victory, or that at the conclusion of the battle they'll receive some either some financial benefit or some worldly benefit, some power. The Imam will make them a governor of somewhere, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of interest, and they are doubters on Imam Hassan, but they're also doubtful about Muawiyah, and they just happen to be in Kufa or they happen to be in Iraq, and they think they should join Imam Hassan. So there are a number of people, and it is unfair, I think, to say that there's a whole homogeneous one group of people who all believe in him as an Imam, and why doesn't he continue the fighting when there's all these different factions of people in the army, and many of them are not willing to unconditionally obey him, or in fact the vast majority are unwilling to unconditionally obey him.
Of course the two armies do meet, I think north of Iraq is the area.
The place is called Maskan. Yes.
Yeah, it's not. Why did the question obviously is, you've got two big large armies, they're about to have a war. Why was there no war? What were the reasons the war did not take place?
I mean, the vast majority of historians mention that Ubaidullah ibn Abbas, who is the younger brother of Abdullah ibn Abbas, famous companion of the Holy Prophet and Imam Ali alayhi salam, is the leader of the army. And right at the point when the battle is about to begin, Muawiyah invites him into the tent for a chat, and when he emerges from the tent, then he displays a unwillingness to continue the fighting. Of course, as the leader of the army, that means that
the
army are
not
fighting because the leader of the army has just said that he's unwilling to lead them into battle. Now a question might be asked is, why does Imam Hassan alayhi salam make Ubaidullah ibn Abbas the leader of the army if he knows? Because of course if we're saying that he's the Imam and he knows, why does he make Ubaidullah ibn Abbas the leader of the army when there's other people? Perhaps we could look at this or we could see two different reasons for why this might be the case. One, maybe the fact that, of course, Ubaydullah ibn Abbas is the cousin of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, or rather of Imam Ali alayhi salam, so he's the uncle in a way of Imam Hassan alayhi salam. And the Imam is showing that he's entrusted this responsibility to someone from the family, from the tribe, from Bani Hashim, rather than from someone outside. You know, someone may have objected and said, you know, he's put somebody else in danger rather than putting a member of his family. So he's put a member of the family at the forefront. But also, I think from another angle, it also shows that if he's the best that the Imam can come up with in terms of the people, it gives us an insight into how bad the rest are, in the sense that if he is the one who could be entrusted the leadership, then, you know, possibly he was the one who had the capability to lead, and he was affected by what Muawiyah was doing. Then what about the rest, and how were the people who are weaker in resolve were affected by what Muawiyah did? And of course, later on it emerges that Ubaydullah ibn Abbas has been offered 1 million dirhams in response or in exchange for abandoning the fighting and, you know, giving away the power and the, you know, authority of the status quo to Muawiyah. And as a consequence of that, the people start to desert Imam Hassan alayhi salam, and eventually he's left with very few people, less than, you know, 40 people who remain alongside Imam Hassan alayhi salam. And again, it gives us an insight into how many people were there who were really Shia, who were really following him, and how many were there who were just there for other reasons, who, when they saw that the fighting was no longer taking place, they were not going to get any benefits from it, worldly or otherwise, they began to abandon him, and in fact, as we then later on see, calling him all kinds of names and abusing him and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think in this area, Masakin, in history, and I advise the brothers, inshallah, we can't go through this whole what happens here. It's tragic events that I think makes one think that how can so many people within a space of a few hours or an afternoon change from wanting to fight Muawiyah to all of a sudden disappearing. And again, the book by Alam al-Qarashi goes into extreme details about what happened, what was being said, which I think here leads Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam to what we hope to discuss, which is the peace treaty, where Imam al-Hasan here has, we can say, no other choice.
I think if we look at, for example, just in this case of how it went from so many people wanting to fight to very few people remaining, if we look at an example from the lifetime of the Holy Prophet of Islam, and I'll continually mention this because I think it's very important, that you had people in the Battle of Uhud, the Holy Prophet had stationed them on the top of the mountain and told them not to move until he commanded otherwise. And when they saw that what appeared to be the end of the battle, and people started getting the war booty and they wanted to go down,
they left
and Abdullah ibn Jubair, who was the leader of the 50, was told them, you can't leave. The Prophet said, don't move, and they said the battle is over, and so they left. And of course that led to a counter-attack by Khalid ibn Walid, and the Holy Prophet being injured, and a battle almost being lost. And I think what that showed is that there were people who were willing to disobey the Holy Prophet of Islam while he was alive. So over something so trivial, something like a couple of pounds or a couple of dirhams or a couple of war booty items or battle armor or so on and so forth. And so it shows that it's very easy for a person to sway away from the deen, even though he is in the presence of the Prophet or of the Imam. And I think the greater lesson from this is that we should always pray and continue to try and increase our iman by reading up these things and reading up about the lives of the Imams, so that we don't sway because of certain trivial worldly pursuits that we're doing in our lives. That yes, there's nothing wrong with pursuing the world to an extent, to the extent that is jaiz and halal, but it should not in the way take us away from what the Imam wants from us. And then of course, so we come back that, of course the people have deserted him, the Imam is left with no choice, and this is part of or this is one of the tricks, or the cunningness of Muawiyah, that he then sends a letter to Imam Hassan alayhi salam saying, your people have deserted you, they've left you, and so I invite you to a peace treaty. And the Imam accepts it, so as to impress upon us that if the offer of peace is made, we Ahlulbayt alayhimus salam will always accept it, to show that we are the people of peace and not the people of war. Yes, when war is imposed upon us, when we are left with no option but war, we will go to war. We're not pacifists. But if peace is offered, then we will always accept peace, because we consider peace to be superior to war. And because Muawiyah makes the offer of peace, it's incumbent on Imam Hassan alayhi salam to accept it. To show why? To show that this is what the religion of Islam is about. He's laying down a principle. He's giving us a policy statement that the religion of Islam is about peace. If a peaceful solution can be reached, it must be, all the stops must be pulled out. In order to try and get to a peaceful solution, this is what the religion of Islam, this is what the school of Ahlulbayt, this is what every single member of Ahlulbayt alayhimus salam is about. Even when we go into Karbala, and this is something that people try and build a contrast. Say Imam Hassan made peace, Imam Hussein went to war. Correct. But Imam Hussein, even till the morning of Ashura, still is making an invitation to peace. He delivers 3 sermons on the day of Ashura. And not just one, he delivers 3 sermons on the day of Ashura, asking them, inviting them, saying to them, why do you want to kill me? Is there any other grandson of the Prophet alive? Is there any other son of Zahra alive in this earth? Have I changed the religion? Have I stolen something from you? Have I taken away any of your rights? If I've done anything to any one of you, speak up and tell me. Tell me what I've done wrong. Why do you want to kill me? And they only replied by saying, بُغْضًا لِأَبِيكَ. We hate you because of your father. So that tells us that Imam Hussein alayhi salam is showing that the policy is the same. The method might be different, but the policy is the same. That just as Imam Hassan alayhi salam here is saying, we're going to, this is the policy statement, we're going to take the peace, we're going to, because the peace has been offered to us, we're offering the peace in Karbala. No one wants to accept it. So we will then go to.
Yeah, and Muawiyah is the one that
Muawiyah here is the one who is instigating the peace. So of course, for his own reasons, but he's instigating the peace, so the Imam is saying, we're going to take up the peace.
And this is obviously after he's bribed so many people, he's changed so many people. So many people have the treason of so many of Imam Hassan's, we can't say loyal companions, but obviously Imam Hassan's army members. And then so Imam Hassan's left with a few numbers. Let's actually go through the peace treaty itself and what it consisted of.
So if we look at the peace treaty, of course, the various historians have mentioned various different conditions within the peace treaty. However, there are 5 or 6 which are muttafiq, unanimously mentioned by all the historians with regards to what was definitely in the peace treaty. The first one actually is, I feel, the most interesting one, and one that deserves really a lot of attention from us. We go over it very quickly sometimes. And that is that the Imam says that Muawiyah will accept and adhere to the Quran and the Sunnah. And he will rule according to the Quran and the Sunnah.
Are these conditions put by Imam Hassan or by Muawiyah?
So first, again, there's exchange of letters. And, Muawiyah put some conditions, then Imam Hassan put some conditions. But these are the conditions that are agreed upon at the end of the exchange. These are the conditions that are agreed upon. So the conditions that mention that Muawiyah will rule according to the Quran and Sunnah. And sometimes we go over this and we say, okay, Muawiyah will rule according to the Quran and Sunnah. But what does this mean?
Imam Hassan is trying to say something.
Imam Hassan is we could never have proved in 1,000 years that Muawiyah was not ruling according to the Quran and Sunnah. But by putting it in the peace treaty, the Imam has, not only written it down, but had Muawiyah's signature on it. that yes, up until now, I was not acting according to the Quran and Sunnah. I was acting against the Quran and Sunnah. And Hassan al-Mujtaba has said, act according to the Quran and Sunnah. And yet he still doesn't act according to it, but we've got an acknowledgement from him that he's not acting according to the Quran and Sunnah, and that he's claiming to be a Khalifa of Rasulullah, he's claiming to be a leader of Muslims, and he's not acting according to the text which the religion of Islam have commanded the leader to act upon, commanded the follower to act upon, let alone the leader. So there's here, here is an acknowledgement from Muawiyah, implicitly say, so that he is not acting according to the Quran and Sunnah. And of course he doesn't. Even afterwards he doesn't act according to the Quran and Sunnah. Then the Imam ﷺ comes to the conditions which refer to the other people, to deal with the other people, which for example is with regards to the security of the people. So he makes a condition with regards to wherever people live, whether they live in Iraq or in the Persian lands or in Sham, they will remain peacefully. Then there's a specific condition for the Shia of Amir al-Mu'mineen, saying that their lives and their honor will be protected. They will not be killed just solely for being Shia. Again, all these points are acknowledgements that people were not living in peace. Shia of Amir al-Mu'mineen were being killed, and Muawiyah is accepting all of this because he's saying that yes, from now on I will not do that. And then the condition, of course, of the la'an and the sab on Amir al-Mu'mineen, which was going on from the members and continued to go on.
Violated again, another condition.
For 70 years, abuse and slander on Amir al-Mu'mineen continued from every single member in the Muslim world. Every single Jum'ah, slander on Amir al-Mu'mineen. And we would never have been able to acknowledge and prove that this is the case if it had not been placed in the peace treaty. And then finally, of course, is that Yazid will not appoint a successor, and that the right of succession belongs to Imam Hassan and after him Imam Hussain. So these are the conditions that have been unanimously agreed on. There's a few other conditions that have also been mentioned by various other historians. One of the accusations or the really slander towards Imam Hassan is that he exchanged his the Khilafat for some money or a stipend that Muawiyah used to give, and this is what he sold, if you like, the Khilafat in a way. And of course this is a very serious allegation on Imam Hassan, mainly made by historians who are enemies of Ahlulbayt, but also has been repeated by certain unsuspecting other Muslim historians as well. And the reality of the situation, of course, is that the reports which surround this particular area are so inconsistent that it's difficult to make a sound case for a particular issue. But what is clear is that Imam Hassan was the Khalifa when he's signing the peace treaty, and therefore all the finances are in his control. All the revenue that's being collected is in his control. So he has to transfer it to Muawiyah if that is the case. So for him then to demand money from Muawiyah doesn't make sense because he's already got the money in his own control. Moreover, if he was taking let's say for argument's sake, he is taking a stipend from the treasury. The treasury belongs to the Muslims. It does not belong to Muawiyah. The stipend is not being given by Muawiyah from his pocket. It's being given from the Baytul Mal, which belongs to the Muslims, and all Muslims are entitled to a share of that money. And during the reign of previous Khalifas, all Muslims would receive a monthly stipend from Baytul Mal. Members of Ahlulbayt, the wives of the Holy Prophet, and other companions will all receive varying amounts of money from Baytul Mal previously. So these allegations are really inconsistent and in a way try to malign the character of Imam Hassan in order to accuse him of selling out, if you like.
Thank you, Sayed Zafar Abbas. Inshallah, we will be going for another short break. When we come back, we will look at what happened after this peace treaty. Of course, as mentioned, all the conditions were violated, and inshallah, we'll try and look at other questions that we have concerning the life of Imam al-Hassan, his wives and children, inshallah. And inshallah, next week we don't have time today. Inshallah, it will have to be next week where we will look at the martyrdom of Imam al-Hassan. We are going for a short break, and inshallah we will see you after this break. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to 14 Divine Guides, our second episode looking at the holy life of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, peace and salutations be upon him. If you've just joined us, we have looked at the peace treaty of Imam al-Hassan in some detail, inshallah. And again, as mentioned in previous shows, these shows are just for us to remind our dear viewers of the history of Islam. We are looking at some events in brief, some in glance, with just, because of obviously time. My advice obviously is, inshallah, as the Sayyid mentioned, is for you to go and do more readings on the lives of the infallible Imams. And inshallah, when you do these readings, especially the life of Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam, you will, inshallah, make sure that you're on the right path, and when worldly desires come to shake you a bit, then inshallah to stay on the path of the Ahlulbayt alayhim salam. And we saw in Mada'in, Masakin, these tragic events take place where there was rumors and lies and bribery and treason, all in the space of those few days before the peace treaty itself. What happened after this peace treaty? Because we see after the peace treaty, Muawiyah violated every condition that was in the treaty.
If we go to what happens after the peace treaty, we'll see that, for example, Sheikh Mufiddin al-Irshad mentions that as soon as the peace treaty is completed, then Muawiyah goes back to, he goes to Damascus. And he says that, I didn't sign this peace treaty because I wanted you to pray or fast or to pay zakat or do any of these things, because you already do that. I only did this because I wanted to gain the rule over you, and so I got that. And as far as the conditions are concerned, the words, in fact, in al-Irshad, that Muawiyah says that as far as the peace treaty is concerned, it's under my foot. For the extent that, in fact, is mentioned by the historians that not only when Imam Ali alayhi salam was martyred, and the news reached Damascus that Muawiyah said Allahu Akbar and he did the sajda of shukr, but also when Imam Hassan alayhi salam, after the completion of the peace treaty, and then when the news of his martyrdom reached Damascus, then Muawiyah said takbir and he did a sajda of shukr that the Imam alayhi salam had been killed. So I mean, really it showed that nothing had really changed, but that Imam Hassan alayhi salam had actually documented the crimes and the misdeeds of Muawiyah over the time, and that had he not signed a peace treaty, it would have been almost impossible for us to really know the extent of what was going on and what had actually happened prior to this.
Ahsantum. I think we learned quite a lot from the life of Imam al-Hassan, especially this peace treaty, and it's important the peace treaty wasn't a sign of surrender, yet it was a sign of peace. There's a difference in the two.
And of course, if we, for example, just on that point, if we say that it is surrender, then the Holy Prophet of Islam signed a peace treaty with people who are not even Muslims. The people of Damascus, as bad as They
Muawiyah
were
was-
Muslims. Whereas the Holy Prophet of Islam signed a peace treaty with the Meccans, who were idol worshippers.
The father of Muawiyah.
The father of Muawiyah, and
Abu Sufyan.
and his cronies, who were not Muslims at the time. So if signing peace is surrender, then alayhi billah Rasulullah surrendered to non-Muslims. But that's not the case. And also this, it shows that peace treaty is not a sign of friendship. You don't make peace with people who you're friends with. You don't need to make peace with them. It's to show that Imam Hassan alayhi salam did not agree with what Muawiyah did. But what he had done was he had actually made Muawiyah acknowledge that this is what he had done wrong. That he doesn't change his ways is obviously up to him, but at least it's documented that this is what Muawiyah did, and he's agreed to, and he's surrendered and agreed that this is what he did.
So inshallah we will try and look at the martyrdom of Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam next week. Just a point about Imam al-Hassan's, inshallah, wives that we can look at. We do know that it was Ju'da, one of his wives, that did poison him at the end. Wal-'iyadu billah. Imam al-Hassan is sometimes accused of marrying a lot of women. And again, you mentioned that, subhanAllah, there's a beautiful similarity between the life of the Prophet ﷺ and Imam al-Hassan. Again, the Prophet had the same accusations. How many wives did Imam al-Hassan have? I think firstly we should look at.
As far as the, for example, Shaykh Mufid alayhi rahmah al-Irshad mentions, and as amongst others, that when Imam Hassan alayhi salam was shaheed, he had 3 women who survived him as wives. So as far as we know, at least 3 of them were his wives. As far as the matter of him marrying a lot of women and divorcing them, then there are some instances of him having divorced a wife. Of course, religion of Islam, divorce is permissible. So if those accounts are held to be true, then really the Imam has not done anything wrong as such. The only issue that might occur is that he's married a lot and divorced a lot, that he doesn't have anything else to do alayhi billah than to marry and divorce. Whereas if we look at the account or the background to these accusations, we'll find that the earliest report or the earliest account of the Imam alayhi salam to have married and divorced, and this saying, where does it originate from? It originates from a particularly practical problem that arises in the Abbasid period. Now, in the Abbasid period, there is a problem that arises which is to do with the rise of how the Abbasids came to power. Now, the Abbasi dynasty and the Abbasid rulers come to power on the claim and on the alam and on the raya that this is Al Muhammad, we're fighting for Al Muhammad. Banu Umayyah are oppressive, they are dhalimeen, they are so on and so forth, and we're fighting for Al Muhammad. And of course they have Muhammad Nafs al-Zakiyya as the man whom they've all agreed upon, Muhammad Nafs al-Zakiyya as the great grandson of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, as the one who they're going to install as the Khalifa. So once the Banu Umayyah wind down, the Banu Abbas take over the power. Now when they come to power, they forget their agreement with Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam, or with Nafs al-Zakiyya, and they say, we are the Ahlulbayt. Now, what do they use as a basis to prove that we are Ahlulbayt? The basis they use to prove that they are Ahlulbayt is they say that we are related to the Holy Prophet of Islam through a male relative, and they are related through a female relative, that they are related through Fatima al-Zahra, and we're related through Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib, a male relative. And at that moment in time, Mansur stands up and he makes a speech, and he says that these people from Imam Hassan alayhi salatu salam's dynasty, or from his descendants rather, they're claiming the Khilafat, so they should know that their grandfather Hassan al-Mujtaba sold the Khilafat to Muawiyah. And whatever, and again, this accusation that he sold the Khilafat and he received. And he sold the Khilafat to Muawiyah for a price, and he received his price. And once he had sold the Khilafat, now he didn't have anything to do, Mansur is saying. Mansur al-Dawaniqi al-Abbasi. He's saying that now he didn't have anything else to do. So he started marrying and divorcing, and he stayed like this until he died in his bed. Before this, there's no account of any accusation on Imam Hassan والسلام, as a person who used to marry and divorce. The first ever account originates in the Abbasid period. So and the reason it occurs is to discredit Muhammad Nafs al-Zakiyya. So now, the reasons of whether Muhammad Nafs al-Zakiyya had did the right thing or wrong thing is secondary, of course, not the matter of our discussion at the moment. But what it certainly did was that Imam Hassan a.s. name was brought into the mix, and was maligned as a way to remove Muhammad Nafs al-Zakiyya's legitimacy and his right towards being appointed as Khalifa. And in fact, it led to a mass persecution of the Hassani Sadat, who, when the city of Baghdad started to be built, Mansur said there's not going to be any water that's going to be used to build the walls of the city, and instead the Sadat generally and particularly of those from Imam Hassan ﷺ started to be killed, and their blood was added to the sand to actually build the walls. So really this is where the accusation originates from. Mansur doesn't give a number. He just says, he started marrying and divorcing. Later on, some historians came and then they mentioned, for example, one historian says that he had 70 wives, and another historian says he has 250 wives, and another one says he has 300 wives. So on and so forth. This, comes later on, of course, much later on when the book started to be written. And then critical examination of those reports showed that, for example, this man, Abu Talib al-Makki, who mentions this riwayat about 300 wives, he had become mad at the time that he wrote this book, and people would say people in Kufa would say, this person has gone mad, and he is saying nonsensical things, so stay away from him. This is where he mentions, for example, this report of 300 wives, that Imam Hassan supposedly had 300 wives.
Thank you, Sayyid. We've had a call awaiting.
Yes.
So inshallah we'll take the call. We have just over 10 minutes. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for calling in.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brother Mustafa Masood, salam to you and the Sayed Zafar Abbas.
Alaikum
assalam. I'm answer these questions in 10 minutes remaining, hopefully. 3 quick questions pertaining to the most important, significant historical Islamic event. Firstly, the peace treaty would have been written on something that has document ever been preserved, and any advanced scientific dating techniques, i.e. radiocarbon isotopic 14, etc., been applied to either that or the letters prior between Muawiyah, Imam al-Hassan, Mujtaba anhum. This will tell us exactly what the conditions were. Since the centuries, many of differing sects have claimed different conditions therein. What happened to that piece of evidence? Is there any modern literature regarding it by Shia scholars? Secondly, if members of Imam Hassan had not deserted or betrayed him, would he still have fought? What were the primary reasons for the desertions? Were there any desertions on Muawiyah's side? If not, why not? Why not as many desertions?
Many desertions from the side of Imam al-Hassan, you mean, yes?
Yeah,
okay.
There were desertions, as the Sayyid mentioned, but my question is, were there any desertions on Muawiyah's side?
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay.
If not, why not?
Third question.
Finally, what was the earliest recorded document regarding that event? Was there any written evidence about it in the early Umayyad period? Are there any original narrations that comes from that early Umayyad period? Many thanks. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you very much, brother. Thank you. Beautiful 3 questions we have. I'll start off. I think question 1 and 3 are very related, because he mentioned, of course, the peace treaty must have been written, and the exchange of letters, because we mentioned there was a lot of exchange of letters. Have we got the literature with us? And this, I'll let you answer that actually first.
I think it's a fantastic question. As far as I'm aware, paper was available in those days, and so the peace treaty was, as far as I'm aware, written on a piece of paper. Whether or not it's preserved is a question I don't know the answer to. It is something that is, I suppose, worth finding out. Needs a bit more historical research into whether it has survived, and if so, where is it, and so on and so forth.
On my last visit, just maybe I can add some light. On my last visit to Najaf,
Yes.
We did see
In the Amini library.
In the Amini library, the Quran that was
written by Imam Ali.
It's been said that it's written to Imam Ali, and they've done tests on the ink that's been used, and it was written on leather skin, which is it's very thin paper. And I asked about the Imam, and from there, because the peace treaty, the copy was given to Muawiyah. From my understanding, it got destroyed with him. If that makes sense, it wasn't something that was kept by the Imam. Let's answer the third before we go to the second, because the second is quite detailed. Obviously, the books that we're using. You get, Ibn Abil Hadid, Al-Tabari, Ibn Kathir, all these narrations from there. What's the earliest work we've got on the whole incident?
I think in terms of history, I think it is important to mention that the vast majority, if not all, of the historical works that currently exist and are in our possession are almost exclusively non-Shia. In its entirety, the book that exists, the earliest text that exists is, I believe, of Al-Waqidi, though in parts we have slightly earlier texts of Al-Yaqubi and of Ibn Ishaq, which all have reference to the peace treaty. Of course, because it's a very political incident, then historians have given attention to it. So as far as I'm aware, that is probably Ibn Ishaq, who died in 150 after Hijrah, is the earliest source who has been referenced to by the current, or later historians, like the likes of Al-Waqidi, of Tabari, of Ibn Sa'ad. All of these guys have referenced Tariq Ibn Ishaq, also Ibn Hisham, who is a student and comes a bit later on. All of these who exist right now, have related from Sirat Ibn Ishaq, who, according to some, there's a bit of debate about him. Some people say he's Shia, some say he wasn't. But the ones who've come later on, certainly the likes of Ibn Hisham, Tabari, Ibn Sa'ad, Al-Waqidi, Al-Yaqubi, are all non-Shia sources, and they've all referred to, in various lengths.
But after the ghaiba of them, Sheikh al-Mufid goes into some details.
Sheikh al-Mufid goes into some detail.
But this is obviously after the ghaiba of them.
Yes, this is, of course, ghaibat al-Sughra, late ghaibat al-Sughra, early ghaibat al-Kubra period. But I'm talking, early. I mean,
that's what I mean. After that, this is the closest we get to a detailed sort of report.
I suppose. All the historians have mentioned it. They've mentioned the conditions. They're varying, of course, conditions.
The ones you mentioned are, as you said, muttafaq. They're sort of agreed.
The conditions that I mentioned are the ones that all of them have mentioned. So, like I say, there's a few that certain have mentioned, some have not mentioned, others, so on and so forth. But the ones that the 5 or 6 that we mentioned, because some have mentioned up to 11, 12 conditions. But the ones that we spoke about, the 5 or 6, are ones that every single one of them has related in terms of as a condition. So, that's really the early sources. As far as the second question, which was about the desertions.
Yes, he mentions, obviously we mentioned why some people left the Imam, because obviously I think it does it really well in this book. It puts the categories of
the people who are Shia and the ones who
says,
are just
there was the Shi'as that were with the Imam, and I'll just go through them. There was the Shia with the few in the numbers, Al-Muhkama, which were the people that were in Imam Ali's army, who intended to battle. In the book it says they wanted to fight Muawiyah, but they had no faith in Imam al-Hassan's affairs at all. There was those that were the ambitious; they just wanted to join for the reason of the numbers being victorious. There was the doubters. They were the first, obviously, to fled. And there was the followers of the leaders, as he mentions. Those are the tribal people that only followed what the tribal
their
leaders
leader
said.
is.
And of course, when the
Correct.
tribal leaders got bribed,
Then they
they
left.
were the first people to
Ahsant.
leave Imam al-Hassan. And they were the large number, I think,
Correct.
as
Yes,
mentioned.
the tribal leaders are obviously the biggest, and of course they are the biggest when it comes to when we talk about the story in Kufa.
Ahsantum.
When
Yes.
Imam Hussein alayhi salam, where Ibn Ziyad
Again.
does exactly the same thing. He calls in the tribal leaders, he
Bribes them off,
and
and
then,
then obviously the followers follow the tribal leader.
The masses obviously follow the leaders.
We also see this in As-Saqifa. I
Correct.
think it's also important to
Correct.
mention in
Correct.
As-Saqifa there was between the
Aus
Ansar
and the Khazraj,
and
between
the
them.
Aus and the Khazraj. Sorry, we see this. They follow the tribal leaders
Correct,
again.
correct. So this tribal issue is very important in early Arabian society. As far as
Did anyone leave from Muawiyah? You know,
I'm not aware that anyone left from Muawiyah's side, but obviously
why would they leave if they're getting...
there's no reason for them to leave because they're getting all the benefits and they don't need to fight even. And so you know, the people who leave from Imam Hassan alayhi salam's side are really because there's such a variety of people, and because Muawiyah's, you know, finances are so strong, because his power, his spies, his deception is so strong, that people are able to leave him. Now, of course, what was summarized was that what if there had been enough people, would Imam Hassan alayhi salam fight? Now, so because the offer of peace had come from Muawiyah, maybe if the fighting had commenced, then maybe the offer of peace would not have come. But as we saw the Imam, and as we see Imam Hussein alayhi salam, that he attempts the invitation to peace right until the last moment. And this is the policy from Ahlulbayt alayhi salam, that yes, we will attempt the policy of peace up until the last moment, up until it is at all possible. The moment when it isn't possible, then we will reluctantly, we will fight only as much as necessary. So we will strive for peace as much as we possibly can, and avoid war as far as possible, but not at all costs. There are times where we will have to fight, and then we will.
Ahsan Sayyidina, I hope that answers the brother's questions. We are coming to the end of the show. Of course, I mentioned the book that I'm using once again, Baqir Sharif Al-Qarashi. This is the first book. He's written an encyclopedia of over 40 volumes on the Ahlulbayt. And he started, and I visited his library, he's in Najaf. He started his first book on Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam. And he, from what I understand, he said there is a need to defend the right of Imam al-Hassan al-Mujtaba. There is and I still think in today's world, we must try and read about Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam more, to try and defend these misconceptions that surround his life. And to summarize, inshallah, we've got 3 minutes. The life of Imam al-Hassan, even after this peace treaty, he was oppressed, where even if he was walking in the city of Medina, people would, come and, wal-iyadhu billah, call him a coward or someone that, they said, you have oppressed us by making us look weak, and you have made us weak.
Sahih.
The Imam was oppressed a lot.
He was oppressed, and he is oppressed. They said to him, they would say, Ya mudhillu al-mu'minin, alayadhu billah, the one who disgraced the believers. And of course, that really is a hurtful thing, for anyone to hear that, you've done something in the interest of the people, and those people say that you've disgraced us. Yet the Imam maintains his composure. He was oppressed in that time. He's oppressed in his martyrdom, which inshallah we'll look at in the next show, and he's oppressed now because we don't know about him. We don't learn about him. We don't talk about him. We don't know him as well as we should know him. And I think I would like to commend the channel for starting the series about the Ma'sumin alayhi salam, because it is an invitation, as we've continually mentioned, for people to take this as a springboard to learn more about the Ma'sumin alayhi salam, learn more about their lives, apply it into our lives, but particularly Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba. And I think, as Baqir Sharif Qarashi, may Allah bless his soul, recently passed away, he's as he said, that there's a need for us to really go into detail about his life, to defend him from the accusations, to really show what a great thing that Imam Hassan alayhi salam actually did in his life. How great an achievement it really was for him to for those accusations to even come, that his achievement and his what he's done is so great that people had to bring accusations to bring down his character, to throw mud at his, at his pristine life, and that really it is our responsibility to find out about him, to learn about him, and to try to act upon his sunnah and his seerah, Insha'Allah.
Inshallah. Thank you, Sayyidina. Inshallah, the viewers have enjoyed tonight's show. If you've missed any of the previous episodes on the life of the Prophet, Fatima Zahra, Imam Ali alayhi salam, or the first episode of Imam al-Hassan, you can watch them on our on-demand website, the show 14 Divine Guides. Thank you once again, Sayed Zafar Abbas. Inshallah, next week we will look at the need of an imam, the need of the imamate, the duty of an imam, the difference between Khalifa, Caliphate being the rulership, and an imam. The Caliphate is something that is Zahiri. For example, we see Imam Ali, even though he was Caliph for only 4 years, but after the Prophet's passing away, Imam Ali was an imam. We will see the need of that, and inshallah we will try and look at the martyrdom of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba salamullah alayhi. Next week will be our last episode on Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam with Sayyid Zafar Abbas. Thank you once again, Sayyidina. Thank you for watching 14 Divine Guides, and inshallah I will see you next week, same time on Ahlulbayt TV. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.